Hello students, today we are going to discuss Jude the Obscure by Thomas Hardy. As we all know that this very novel, Jude the Obscure, is one of the representative novels of Victorian era. Let's move to the contents. The contents I'm going to cover in today's discussion are introduction of the author, introduction and background of the novel, then the plot summary. I shall try my best to cover themes, characters, and important quotations and debates in today's discussion, but I think we will only be able to cover the first three things. So let's move to the discussion. First of all, here is the introduction of Thomas Hardy. Who was actually Thomas Hardy? Hardy was born in 1840, England. He was a Victorian poet and novelist, as well as an English poet and novelist of Victorian era. We can also say that. He was the eldest son of his parents. He got the passion of book reading from his mother. He spent most of his time in isolation on the fields of his region. He grew up in a countryside area, and the very thing is depicted in the rustic settings of his novels. He was inspired of the ideas of Charles Swinburne, Robert Browning, and Charles Darwin. He worked as an architect in the early phase of his career. Let's move to the literary creations of the very writer Thomas Hardy. While switching to a new career of England's writer or of an English writer, he started writing for a magazine, and he used to write short stories. He also wrote short stories for the magazine, and then he started writing novels. Some of his famous novels. Some of his famous novels are Far from the Madding Crowd, and that was published in 1874. The Return of the Native, it was published in 1878. The Mayor of Casterbridge, it was published in 1886. And the heart favorite novel of academia, Tess of the D'Urbervilles, it was published in 1891. Then came the last novel, Jude the Obscure, that was published in 1895. After that, we find a collection of short stories, and it was The Dynastus, a drama of Napoleonic Wars. It was the collection of short stories. Technically speaking, Jude the Obscure was his last novel. It was his last lengthy fictional work. Why it was his last work? Let's discuss that. When we talk about the introduction of this novel, Jude the Obscure, we find that Jude the Obscure was actually Thomas Hardy's last novel. Why it was his last novel? Because it had raised some critical issues that had jolted the minds of the Victorian readers. That's why it is said that the very novel, it challenged the Victorian reader mentally as well as psychologically. The themes it has dealt with include immorality, illegitimacy, obscenity, and living without marriages. But this novel had to face a serious criticism and hot debates. So this harsh criticism actually discouraged Thomas Hardy, and he got upset. So the very aspect of harsh criticism made Hardy to stop writing novels, and after that he started writing poetry and he wrote short stories. Let's come to the plot summary of the novel. Jude Fawley was a young boy of 11 years, and he was highly impressed from his teacher, Mr. Fulotson. He was raised by his aunt, with whom he worked on her bakery. So, from this aspect, we came to know that he belonged to the working class. He worked so hard and learned many ways of trade to earn money for his studies because he was a very enthusiastic student and learner, and to he wanted to become a classical scholar. But eventually he fell in love, or he got infatuated from Arabella Dunn, and he had to marry Arabella Dunn. Why? Because it was a whole drama, it was a plotted drama, it was a trick. He fell in love and got married with Arabella Dunn, who had made him to think that he was going to be the father of her child. It was actually a trick of Arabella. She cheated on him and she left him and she went to Australia with her parents. So, in the whole plot of this novel, Arabella is a very shrewd and cunning character. Uh, she, first of all, trapped Jude, she got married to him, and then she cheated on him, and she went to Australia. After that, the heartbroken Jude, he decided to carry on his dream to become a classical scholar, and he left for Christminster. It is pronounced as Christminster because it is named after a monastery, and it was his inspiration to follow the footsteps of his own school teacher, who was his favorite teacher, and his name was Mr. Richard Fullerton. And this very man, Richard Fullerton, he is going to play a very important role in the later phase of the novel, means in the plot of the novel. Mr. Richard Fullerton, he is going to play a very important role. Well, on the other hand, we were talking about Jude's desire to become a classical scholar, so he had a desire to study in the university. So after his breakup from Arabella, he managed to go to Christminster. He joined that he joined the institution, and he started learning, and after that he worked as a cleric over there as well. Jude then met his cousin Sue Brighthead, and she is also another sensitive character just like Jude. And Jude, he tried his best to not to fall in love with her, but eventually he fell in love with her. He managed her and arranged her work with Mr. Fullerton, and he helped her, in fact, to work with Mr. Fullerton. But he had to feel a heartbreak when he came to know about their marriage. Then, after some time, Sue started realizing that it wasn't a successful marriage and she wasn't happy with her marriage, and she decided to leave Fullerton and she came back to live with Jude. Sue and Jude both were divorced and they had a very horrible experience of marriages. That's why they didn't want to remarry. And they started living in a relationship without marriage. After that, Jude came to know about his son from Arabella at Australia. And Jude earnestly wanted to bring his son back, and he just succeeded in bringing his son back from Arabella. And then he had his own children from Sue, and all of them they started living. Uh, Means Jude and Sue, they were living in a relationship, in a living relationship, and along with their children. But when they decided to get back to Christminster, they could not find a house. Why? Because their lifestyle was not up to the standards of the society. They were not married, so they were not fit into the social and class standards of the society of their time. So they had to face the consequences. when they shifted over there, they couldn't find a house, and eventually they started living in lodges. Means Sue, along with children, she started living in lodges, and on the other hand, Jude, he started living in the inn. And the eve, Sue used to go to Jude's room for dinner, and the whole situation was extremely confusing for the children, and they couldn't find this lifestyle as a significant lifestyle. So they had taken a very horrible decision, and what happened after that, Jude and Sue's reputation in the city had made a horrible effect on little Father Time's psychology, and he killed both of his siblings, and then he hanged himself. So after that, Jude and Sue, they realized that it was actually the result of their own mistakes. It was actually the result of their own crimes they were committing, because they were not living according to the social and religious standards, and at least they were not living according to the religiously and socially accepted ways. So they were guilty, and they considered themselves a part of a very cursed clan, and they considered themselves as cursed creatures. So out of the guilt, Sue decided to get back to Fullerton, and Jude decided to remarry Arabella. Well, after that, they just, just met once, and Jude and Sue then declared their love for each other. But Jude died at the end, soon after that, and he died in isolation. Jude died in isolation because his marriage with Arabella was not a successful marriage. Again, it was just fulfilling the social standards, the standards of social acceptability and social integrity, but it wasn't a peaceful marriage, it wasn't a happy marriage. So Jude died in isolation, and at the end, only Arabella and Mrs. Adeline were standing by the side of his coffin. And Sue, on the other hand, she started living with Fullerton, and it wasn't a happy relationship, but it was a socially accepted relationship. So the whole scenario, it tells us one thing. It clarifies us that the Victorian society was a type of society that had some sort of hypocritic standards. It wasn't allowing, it wasn't accepting the individuals who were trying to exercise their own wills. So over there, they were so traditional and conventional that they did not allow an individual to decide for his or her life. They didn't allow an individual to live according to his dreams and desires, and they didn't allow an individual to fulfill his plans if he or she belongs to an average class. So belong to an average class. So this is the plot line of the very novel, and in the next video, I shall try my best to cover the whole debate, and we will discuss the characters, the themes, and important debates and quotations of the novel. And if you like my videos, please subscribe to my channel and promote this channel with your friends, in your literary circles, and promote the platform of English literature on a click, please. Thank you so much for today. Allah Hafiz.